Today I want to take a minute to talk about something that I feel like we often forget in education, something that as parents we forget too, which is children are self-motivated to learn, but that motivation evaporates in seconds when they lose the love of it. And that's one thing that for me as a child was always difficult, that even things that I would actually enjoy as a child became unenjoyable through the process of education requiring that I explain my learning for testing or assessment purposes, as opposed to being able to demonstrate my learning. So even things that I enjoyed had kind of the life sucked out of them. And the other thing associated with that is this idea that's becoming really popular in education now, which is the idea of agency, or I guess the intrinsic drive to learn, as opposed to the extrinsic drive from teachers or curriculum or from parents or from other things. And I think that it is just so important for us to allow children to keep that love of learning in deep inside themselves. And that's what I want to talk about today. So student agency, as defined by my Victorian government, student agency refers to the level of autonomy and power that a student experiences in the learning environment. So the first part is about the student's experience of what autonomy and power they hold within themselves to guide, direct, and understand learning. The next thing it says is student voice and agency are intrinsically linked. So they add in this thing about voice. Agency gives students the power to direct and take responsibility for their learning, creating independent and self-regulated learners. And it's interesting, it says agency gives students the ability. It's not the teacher giving the student the ability. And that's one thing I want to talk about today is the paradox between the teacher, the educator, whoever's in the room supporting that child. If it's the teacher that is giving them agency, well, how do you do that? And this is the paradox. You can't teach a child to have agency. I can't say to you, right, today we're going to learn about agency. I mean, I can define what agency is. I can just define what intrinsic motivation is. We can talk about those things. But you're not doing it if you are teaching a child to do it. You're only doing it when the teacher says, okay, I'm going to let go. I'm going to give up my power and control over what needs to be learnt right now, and I'm going to allow the child to guide that process. And this is the trick. So the teachers have this, on the one hand, they've kind of got the curriculum here they're trying to teach, and they've got a direction that they want to go. But the second that you have a direction that you want to go, the instant that that's in your mind, I think that you've started down the road of removing the agency from the child. And that's the tricky situation that teachers feel in terms of giving children a love of learning. How do you create an internal love of learning? I was thinking about that movie Braveheart, where Mel Gibson says, you can take my life, but you can't take my freedom. He has internally, there's something that he's got inside him that doesn't matter, even if you chop off his head, you can't take away something that's inside of him. And one thing that you can't, it's very, very difficult to understand or assess is whether a child is actually the level of agency that they have in their lives, particularly for children who struggle to articulate basic concepts. And this is actually quite a complex concept. This is really tricky. This is the paradox that we live in, is this having a curriculum that we want to explore and we want children to have in their minds, but also leaving space in the day for them to demonstrate agency, which I think is highly linked to a love of learning and that kind of, that really basic concept of that we want for children, for adults to have as they pass into their adult life, and obviously like in their childhoods as well, is this idea that they are self-motivated learners, that the desire to experience life in all of its richness, the desire to explore their gifts and talents and the things that make them unique, is something that's deeply internally driven. And I think that's something in this day and age, it's worth talking about that we need to practice. There's this external force on them all the time, which either comes directly from the curriculum or indirectly from the curriculum, government standards and NAPLAN and other things, through the teacher who feels pressure to teach. And so I feel teachers are in a tricky position. I have a teaching background. Teaching is hard, managing that many, up to say 30 children in a class and keeping them somehow on track with what needs to be learned is really hard. And yet they've got now this other pressure within the curriculum, which is to give children this self-motivated, internally driven agency. I think these two things they're kind of at odds with each other, and it's really hard. I think the reason we're in this tricky position is because over the last, say, 50 to 100 years, the basic skills during the Industrial Revolution, turn of last century, there was this sort of set of fundamental skills that we wanted all children to have. Over the years, that amount of curriculum has not only ballooned out, it's also ballooned downwards. So the skills that we used to teach, say, specialist classes in year 10, or, what is that, say 15-year-olds, all of these things at each level have crept down earlier and earlier. And if you're a really hardcore parent, there's a lot of people now trying to teach children skills that would have been learnt in, say, grade 1, reading and writing and those basic skills, prep in grade 1, are now being taught to, or attempted to being taught, to 3-year-olds. And there's a risk in that. And I think a lot of people recognize it, but there's some people who don't. And that is that if you push these skills at older levels to children at younger levels, there's kind of two issues. One is there's an opportunity cost or an opportunity lost, that the skills that were supposed to be learnt or that children learn best and easiest and they love learning when they're young. So instead of learning reading and writing, they're organising and stacking different size blocks and comparing their shape and size and doing this very natural mathematical base level skill, and they're babbling and talking to their parents and putting together basic sentences in a very natural way that they love to do. Some parents, and there are some providers out there who are teaching these skills at very, very young ages, when actually we've lost a few of the rungs of the ladder below. You may be able to force a child to recognise letters and do some early literacy work early, but they've missed out on these basic principles of how they naturally put those things together in their mind first. So you may have a technically higher level that you can show off at birthday party or Christmas dinner, but actually the foundational levels underneath that of children being able to explore and experiment with things and understand how the basic foundations of those things work may not be there. So it's a very paper-thin, shallow understanding of those skills. Secondly, some kids might love it, but I think a lot of children, pushing things too early, we risk losing the love of learning, losing that intrinsic sense that I have. And this is what this is important because this is what we need in a 21st century modern world where we expect professionalism of people. And when I say professionalism, what I mean is a professional is a person who does their job and loves it and does it well, not because there's a boss grinding them to do it, because it's something that intrinsically they want to do. And I think fundamentally those people enjoy that more. So it's important that we give children that base level sense right from the start. We give them this foundational sense that they are moving into the world with a deep sense of self-motivation and intrinsic motivation to learn. I think this is important for all children. It's certainly important for personally, I'm experiencing my son who goes to school now, and on Monday he just ran out of class. And I think when I talk to him, he can't really articulate it, but my guess is he's just overloaded. In the morning, he's like me. He's got a lot of energy. He's going to be fantastic as an adult, self-motivated, passionate, and he's got this internal drive to do an experiment with life. And I love that. But his current experience is that he has very little autonomy. From waking up in the morning, there's this hustle to get breakfast, and he's being told to sit down, sit still, eat your breakfast, put your shoes on, get dressed, and then he goes into school, and he also experiences a huge lack of autonomy. And I think this is leading to that thing that we all can get concerned about, which is this breaking of a child's autonomy at least. And for some of you, you might be kind of thinking like, yeah, but we don't want these wild animals around here. They need to be, children need some level of containment. They need some level of the ability for teachers and other people to speak into their lives and give them information. And that's really important. If you're interested in this conversation, I'd love it if you could like this video, and particularly if you want to subscribe, which will be in the red button below, and tick that bell icon so that you are updated when new things come out, because I'm going to be doing more of this. And this is not a finished conversation. I want to get some guests on and interview them specifically about agency and how we build up that love of learning in children, because it's a really critical thing that is close to my heart in terms of my own family, but I think is a growing issue generally in the world. To summarize, the curriculum has kind of ballooned out and gone and been pushed down, and it's getting very concentrated. And so one of the struggles is I'd love teachers and schools to start thinking about how can we make space every day for children to have agency time, if you like, or some people call it independent learning time. But when I say that, I mean real letting go time, where children are free to do the activities that their brain leads them to do, and that those activities, they can be explored with the teacher, but the teacher is really taking that child-led back seat where they allow the child to lead the game, lead the process, and the children are encouraged to do that, whether it's related to the curriculum or not, because lots of interesting things will come out of that, which can then be used as a springboard back into curriculum. And then you've got a really interesting process where the children are driving kind of the ideas generation, which builds their confidence, use those things as sort of a diving board into curriculum areas, as opposed to the other way around. That MC Hammer song, Can't Touch This, we had a campaign that we worked on a little while ago that we never launched. It was going to be called Can't Teach That. Dum, 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 dum. Can't teach that. Dum, dum. That's something really important. You cannot teach agency. There is a paradox there. The second you try to force it or teach it, you've lost it. And giving children agency builds their confidence that they have something unique and special to give in the world. When we look around at human beings today, there's a huge number of people who don't feel that. They don't feel like they have unique gifts and talents. And I don't want people to get upset that, we've got to treat everyone like a fragile flower and that they're all special. But there is a point there that we want people to feel like they've got something to give and contribute, and to be confident to give that to the world. We want that in whether they're employees or entrepreneurs or whatever. We want people to be confident that they have something unique to give. And I think that both parents and teachers play an important role in uplifting children, that sense that children have that to give. What do you think about this? I would love for people to give their comments below and tell me that this is ridiculous. Tell me if I've missed anything. Tell me if you want to know more about particular points, because I'd like to actually go out and find specialists in this area and to get their thoughts on this channel so we can put it out to you guys to build this idea of agency, the love of learning. And I think the last thing I'd say is, if this seems out of our normal topic about play, it's not at all. Play is a child's key tool for self-directed, self-motivated learning. And it's intrinsically motivated. It comes from a prompt in their brain and their body to do the things that their development is ready to do. And so for me, this idea that agency is now a solid part of the curriculum is fantastic. It's a crucial element that shows that we are moving towards a more caring and a more human system of education, where we appreciate that children have a desire to learn, and in keeping that love of learning and agency will build that confidence to learn. And the outcome is that our teaching and our parenting will be easier if we encourage that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on agency, and I would love your feedback. I'd love your careful thoughts. I'd love to know if there are resources around that are worth teachers and educators and parents reading. Please leave your thoughtful responses below in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. More coming soon.